Well, when it comes to high-speed internet service, the difference can come down to three simple letters: ROI, which stands for return on investment. Bottom line, most broadband providers say they just cannot make work without a certain level of population density. And while internet service can be as essential to modern life as electricity or telephone service, it does not carry the same distinction. The FCC, the government agency that oversees our public airwaves, has been reluctant to classify the internet as a Title II mandatory service like other utilities. So internet providers essentially tend to just follow the money, and that's most often in urban areas. Join me now from the Texas-Oklahoma Broadband Economic Development Summit at Francis Tuttle Technology Center in Oklahoma City is economist Brian Whitacre, who follows broadband and its impact on our economy. Well, Brian, we've seen some of the work underway here in the state with broadband expansion, but the gap between rural and metro areas is a wide one. But is it starting to close?
Well, it's actually quite surprising. If you look at the data back in 2003, when people were first starting to adopt broadband, the gap between rural and urban was about 13 percentage points. And if you fast forward to 2010, 2011, that gap is still 13 percentage points. We have a lot more people adopting in both rural and urban America, but that gap is still there.
Now, we hear a lot of claims about the economic impact broadband can have in rural areas. What has your study found?
So yes, my research is probably among the latest to find that there is an impact of broadband on the rural economy. So what we did was we looked at otherwise similar rural communities kind of before broadband got there. So they were similar in terms of income, education, unemployment. So around the 2000 time frame. And then we said, okay, let's look fast forward to 2010. Some of those communities did a good job adopting broadband. So they had adoption rates of 60%, 80%. Other ones had a very poor adoption of broadband, 40% and less. And we said, okay, let's compare the economic outcomes of those otherwise similar communities. What we found was the ones that did a good job of adopting had higher income levels, lower unemployment levels. Those that did a poor job adopting had fewer jobs, fewer businesses. So yes, there is an economic impact associated with broadband.
Now, there's a definite push in education to deliver more classes to more people using digital technology. How important is broadband from an education standpoint?
It's hugely important. As a college educator, I always ask this question to my students. A lot of them come from classes of 5 people, 10 people, and graduating classes of 40 people, and they always say that the broadband technology really enabled them to have a much better curriculum in their high school classes. So they could take Spanish classes online, they could have higher level math classes. It's very, very important for some of these students that otherwise would not have those opportunities.
Now, each of the companies we're talking with today are up front with the fact that the work they're doing in rural America would not be possible without the federal help. From your perspective, what public policies should we be focusing on?
So that's a great point. Yes, the government does do a great job with these programs. My perspective is we need to focus a little bit more not just on the provision of broadband, but on actively getting people to productively use broadband. So the adoption thing is what I'm really focused on. So the telecommunications companies are doing a great job bringing these lines to rural America, but we need to be a little bit more proactive in teaching them things like e-commerce or how to set up a small business and things of that nature.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian. Brian Whitacre, an economist who specializes in rural broadband development for Oklahoma State University.